statistical, mathematical fact
never has been down.
has broken every single record. There is no asset that has come close.
It's the only thing in the industry that was not touched, that was not hacked, and it never fails doing what it promised in 2009. It's never
What's
failed.
the best performing asset the world has ever seen? And you'll find out.
I would
that
do
it's
my very
Bitcoin.
best, to the best of my ability, to give something of value, to give something that I believe you'll be able to chew on, to consider, and something that might be able to benefit you for the rest of your lives. I have been traveling the world for the last 3 decades, spreading the gospel of financial freedom in a variety of different forms, usually through encouraging people to understand financial markets, because my message is always that money makes the world go around, whether you like it or not. And that one of the keys to understanding money was to understand financial markets, the rails on which that money system operated. And I've traveled the globe. I've had offices in all over the world, in multiple different countries and cities. Even this year, I'll be traveling to 19 different cities throughout the world, spreading that gospel. What has changed in the last 3.5 years, though, is that a big portion of that message that I've been giving for 3 decades now is rooted in Bitcoin. Bitcoin has revolutionized or revolutionized or evolutionized my life, depending upon your point of view. It is literally cut through, captured, clarified many of the mysteries that I hadn't quite dotted the I's on, across the T's on it. It's helped me peek behind the curtain and see Oz for what Oz really is. It's helped me to break through the matrix, for lack of a better term. And I am now dedicating a big portion of my professional life to raising the level of awareness, the level of sophistication regarding the level of understanding regarding Bitcoin and what this incredible, amazing asset has come to do for human society. I do want to, for those of you who are new to my live spaces, I want to let you know right up front that I do not conduct spaces in the fashion where this is just a big giant, beer drinking, rah session. I don't pass the mic. I feel that the manner in which I deliver my limited information and knowledge is best done through a monologue form. I do try to take questions at the end. Oftentimes when I speak too long, I realize that it would only elongate our session. So sometimes I'm not able to take your questions, but I do try to touch on them after the session in written form. When I'm not able to take your questions, I also, before we delve into the topic today, want to let you know that every single one of my live spaces does wind up on my Bitcoin podcast called Bitcoin Unleashed. You can find Bitcoin Unleashed on Spotify. Fountain app, one of my favorite places to listen to it because you earn free sats. Also on Fountain app, I am able to take the long form episode, post that. But in addition to that, that app allows me to carve out smaller segments or clips, as you will, from the long form content that just makes many of the things we talk about here more digestible. So I prefer a Fountain app where you can earn some sats and take advantage of that clip feature. And but you can find Bitcoin Unleashed on YouTube, on Google, on Spotify, and on a variety of other formats. All right, guys. Today I wanted to talk about something that touches my life, your life, and every single other person's life on planet Earth. I want to talk about the fact that the world has forgotten how to save. And I also want to talk about how Bitcoin is bringing savings back to the world. Now, in truth, that title is not entirely correct, because it's not so much that the world forgot how to save. What's more correct, what's more true, is the fact that the world was robbed of its ability to save. That's actually more accurate. Our right to save for the future was taken from us. Our ability to plan ahead was robbed from us. And it was done purposefully, which I'm going to demonstrate for you. And for the very first time, it is this generation, it is the new generation that has absolutely no form of savings whatsoever. Not a single one. Now, let's talk about this. Let's delve in, shall we? I'm going to start by telling you a story. This is a true story. In the early 1980s, my father was always a gold bug, or had been a gold bug through the 1960s through the 1970s. My dad was a gold bug for the vast majority of those 2 decades, which pretty much meant that I grew up in a gold bug oriented family, right? To make a long story short, my father cashed out on the gold bull run right into the beginning of the 1980s, late 1970s into the early 1980s in a huge way. And this had a material effect on our family's resources, our family's wealth, for lack of a better word. A lot of things changed at that time in my family. From our home, our cars changed. My school got upgraded. A lot of things changed. And I remember this like it was yesterday. My father had a tremendous amount of cash as a result of this huge gold win, this windfall. And he went to a financial institution that was somewhat connected to VAs. My father was in the military, so it was a credit union of some sort. I can't remember the details regarding it, but my point is, my father opened up an account at this institution that catered themselves to U.S. veterans and was paid interest at the rate of 21%. I want you to think about this for a second. Cash sitting in a financial institution, my father was earning 21%. That percentage began to come down over time. I remember it at another time I took notice. It was 18%. But at its peak, my father was earning 21%. Now I ask you, at 21%, you are outperforming everything on planet Earth. You're outperforming the annualized average gain of equities. And the 1970s was a very terrible decade for equities. No one ever thought it was possible for the Dow Jones Industrial Average to break above 1,000. It never broke above 1,000 in its entire existence. And every single time throughout the 1970s, the Dow Jones Industrial Average tried to break 1,000, it would come tumbling back down. Many people believed that it would never be superseded. For the most part, the 1970s was largely a big giant dud for the equity market. All right. Bonds did okay, but still weren't lighting the world up on fire either. And so a 21% interest rate on cash for doing nothing but saving for the future outperformed everything on planet Earth. It even outperformed the money printer, which was still pretty much going on at decent speeds back then. Inflation at the time was still a major concern. And it was because of this runaway inflation and the raising of interest rates by the Fed at that time that it was even possible for a savings account to earn 21%. But at 21%, people, you don't need anything. Do you understand? You don't need to take risks because you have the ability to save supposedly safely for your family in the future. You don't need to take unnecessary risk with 21% guaranteed payment or interest. You don't need stocks. You don't need bonds. You don't eat, real estate would be nice, but you don't need it. This is outperforming real estate as well, 21%. And so this actually posed a problem to the overall financial fiat system if it were to persist. You can't have in a fiat system that is designed to partially enslave every one of its participants by taking a portion of their productivity away from them, whether that's at 2% a year or 6% a year. That's what an inflation rate is, right? It is a theft of one's productivity. It is a theft of one's time, right? Doesn't matter whether someone steals from you 2% at a time or 6% at a time or 10% at a time. It's still freaking theft, right? And so when you're in a system like that, where in which it's designed to steal the productivity from all of its participants, you can't have for a prolonged period of time an escape. You can't have an escape from that theft. So 21% interest is an escape. But this gave everyone who produced enough to have some excess to save for the future at 21% a fighting chance. It pretty much gave them a future. In 1985, a plan was formed. It was called the Plaza Accord amongst the G5 nations to do something really important at that time. All the G5 nations came together to help the United States narrow its trade deficit by doing one thing and one thing only. They all got together and said, we're going to crush the value of the US dollar. Now, you would intuitively think that that's a bad thing, right? But no, the United States brought everyone together, and everyone agreed. The most powerful countries in the world at that time, from an economic point of view, they agreed. You can Google this yourself. It's called the Plaza Accord. They agreed to crush the US dollar. In addition to crushing the value that my father was earning 21% on, they were at the same time dropping the interest rates from that 21%. So the idea was to take this away from people. We're going to crush the value of the US dollar. And we're also going to get this freaking interest rate down. And from the early 1980s all the way to what year? 2020. It took them that long, but they finally got there. They brought interest rates down from 21% to what? Zero, people. Zero. In certain parts of the world, it went negative, right? Negative 5%, negative 6%. The US went to zero. From 1980 all the way to 2020, as if it was on a freaking clock. You understand? 40 years. And it was done. Interest rates were completely eliminated. Monetary debasement, which is crushing the purchasing power of the US dollar went to epic proportions. Both of those things, bringing the purchasing power of the US dollar down while bringing the escape from that, the higher interest rates down to zero, happened at the same time. Dollars in 2020 were printed at an unprecedented rate. At the same time, interest rates landed on zero. That, my friends, is not by chance. This game is played very, very well. It's played with foresight. It's freaking chess. It's not checkers. You're playing checkers. These people are playing 3D freaking chess. And the reason why these things often go unnoticed is because they're very good at playing the long game. The long game allows them to have the final domino fall in a different generation. You see, in your more unstable countries in the world that are stealing from their citizens, they often do it so quickly that the same generation sees the effect. Do you understand? So, for instance, in Venezuela, the same generation saw wealth evaporate to zero wealth within the same generation. You understand? So the same generation felt wealthy and felt poor at the same time because the decline happened so quickly. Well, when you play that game better, you make sure that the domino of stealing wealth, that first domino that you knocked out, you don't want the last domino to fall in the same generation. You want the last domino to fall in a different generation so that that generation can't connect the start to the prior generation. That's how a lot of this stuff is gone unnoticed, and very few people connect the dots. Very few people saw the first domino in the early 1980s with interest rates at 21%, 18 to 21%, all the way to zero. That landing spot of zero was not a mistake. That was planned. The collapse in the US dollar's purchasing power, forcing Americans to work more hours each day for the same thing they bought last year, every single year of their life. That is by design. That is by a plan. And so, what I've been trying to get as many people as possible understanding is that this theft of purchasing power, this, while taking away the escape from the theft, the 21%, the ability to save, this theft of productivity goes to someone. It's not just stealing for the sake of stealing it because somebody doesn't want you to have it. It goes somewhere. So there's 2%. The goal is supposed to be, I'm supposed to only steal 2% from you every year. I'm a thief, but I'm a benevolent thief. I'm not going to steal 100% of your productivity from you because that would be a 100% slave. You're going to be a 2% slave. I'm going to steal 2% of your productivity from you. Or at least I'm going to say it's 2%, but it's really something like 7, 8%. But I'm going to say it's 2%. And so this 2%, which is really 7 or 8% on average a year, that goes to someone. Someone benefits from that. That thief benefits from what it takes. But some players, and you know who I'm talking about, They play the game so well that they take this 2, which is really 7 to 8% from every single human being. They take it every single year. But they take it so smoothly, they take it so slowly that you don't feel that the plane that you're on is crashing. And you're taught through media to look at all the other planes outside of your window. You're sitting on a plane, the US dollar. The US dollar is your plane, right? As an American, you're sitting on the US dollar plane. You are bombarded, you are incentivized to look through the window from your seat and look at all the other planes throughout the world diving toward the ground. They're crashing. They're accelerating past you. You look beneath you, you see all kinds of other planes just darting straight for the ground, which makes it appear as though you're not crashing because they're crashing faster. That's the only thing. All the planes are crashing. The US dollar's crashing towards zero. All right? The Argentinian peso is crashing towards zero at a different rate. The Turkish lira is crashing towards zero at a different rate. The Venezuelan bolivar crashed towards zero at a different rate. The Mexican peso is crashing towards zero at a different rate. The Japanese yen is crashing towards zero at a different rate. The euro is crashing towards zero at a different rate. The Canadian dollar is crashing towards zero at a different rate. The Australian dollar is crashing at a different rate. The Nigerian, you follow what I'm saying. Every plane, every fiat currency is collapsing. Everyone is crashing towards zero. It's just that the US dollar is crashing the slowest. And as long as you're looking out of the window at every other crash going on, it makes you feel like you're not crashing. The only thing that makes the US dollar's crash visible is Bitcoin, because when you measure the dollar in Bitcoin terms, it's a straight kamikaze suicide collapse towards zero. But you're not taught to do that. You're taught to look at it against every other plane, inferior plane out there that's crashing faster. It makes the dollar look amazing. And so, what's my point here? My point is that the escape, saving for the future, has been taken away from us. The 21% that my dad used to earn has been taken away from everybody, not just my dad, who's no longer with us, but you know what I'm saying. Now, I want you to truly understand what this has led to. You see, when you have a declining, whether it's at 2% or 8% or 10%, doesn't matter, it's still declining. When you have a fiat currency, a dollar, that is less tomorrow than it is today, and even less in value next month than it is today, and even more less of a value a year from now than it is today, you are not incentivized to save, because the dollar you're going to receive tomorrow is inferior to the dollar that you have today. The dollar you're going to get back next year is dramatically less in value, less in purchasing power than the dollar that you have today. If you put a dollar into a 5-year US bond today, that dollar that you're going to receive back 5 years from now has been debased on top of debased, has lost purchasing power. You're not getting the same dollars back. You're getting an exponentially less valuable dollar back. So here's the first thing I need you to understand. Tomorrow's dollar is inferior to today's dollar. And that will never stop, ever, not in your entire lifetimes. The dollar you receive, the dollar you're waiting for next month is less valuable than the dollar that exists today. The dollar you're waiting to receive a year from now that you have locked up in a CD or a bond or even in a stock, the dollar you're going to get back is inferior to the dollar today, is less valuable, not more, less. Now, some people might say, well, Oliver, what if what I'm putting the dollar in offsets that? Well, that's the only thing that you possibly had at your disposal to escape the crashing plane. You're on a crashing plane. To slow the crash down, you must try to flip your dollars into something that is falling less, slower than your plane. Sometimes real estate is falling to the ground slower than the actual dollar itself. Sometimes. So you switch your dollars there. Sometimes NASDAQ stocks are crashing to the ground slower than the actual US dollar plane is crashing. So I flip to that plane. All investing is finding the plane that is crashing to the ground slower. But make no mistake about this, they're all crashing to the ground. Oh yes, stocks are crashing to the ground. The dollar is crashing to the ground. Stocks are crashing to the ground. Real estate is crashing to the ground. Everything is crashing. The question is, which one's crashing the slowest? So all financial acumen is being able, having the skill to identify which of the planes in the sky right now, they're all crashing, but which one's crashing slower than the rest of them. And it flip-flops and changes on you. Sometimes it's the real estate plane. Sometimes it's the stock plane. Sometimes it's the bond plane. Do you understand? Sometimes it's the NASDAQ plane. Sometimes, and then there's sometimes it's this sector and sometimes it's that sector, but they're all crashing. All of them. Understanding that the dollar tomorrow that you're waiting to receive is always less valuable than the dollar today. If you understand that, then you understand how people like me in my industry and throughout the world have manipulated that system to become what's called fiat wealthy. There is a way to play that game. And the way to play that game where the dollar you receive later is less than the dollar you have now, if the dollar is perpetually declining, the way you benefit from that is to go short dollars. I'm going to repeat that. If you look at all the people who have beat that system, all the people who are wealthy today in a system that's designed to steal even your wealth, 2% at a time, 8% at a time, or whatever. How? That's a system where the dollar tomorrow is less than the dollar today. How do you turn that on the system itself and make good from it. You short the dollar. That's what's perpetually guaranteed to go down forever. So you get short the dollar and you stay short the dollar. You never get off the short. You never exit the short. You establish the short in the dollar and you never let the short go. Now, those of you who are not familiar with my industry, I've been in the industry for 43 years, 37 years professionally, but I will briefly educate you on how to do this. You short the dollar by being perpetually in debt. It's as simple as that. You see, in a fiat system that's designed to rob purchasing power from every participant through inflation, that's a system where the dollar tomorrow is less than the dollar today. And the dollar next month is less than the dollar from today. And the dollar next year is less than the dollar from this year. So that will never stop. You need to get short by going negative dollars. When you go negative dollars, you are short, which means that if and when you have to pay that debt back, you pay it back with dollars that are less valuable. You don't pay it back with dollars that are more valuable. Dollars, that the most valuable dollar is the dollar today. The dollar tomorrow is less valuable. The dollar next month is less valuable. You don't want to pay with dollars today. You want to pay with dollars next year or next 5 years or next 10 years or next 30 years. You never want to pay with the strongest dollar. That would be paying today. And so if you think about all the wealthy people, all the people who beat the system, they are masters at debt. Do you understand? You see, the poor people still think saving is the way to get wealthy. But I just told you that savings was taken from people. It's the worst thing to do in a fiat system. You don't save. In fact, you go past zero. Going past zero into debt is the opposite of savings. You can't save your way to a better position in a fiat system. You can only debt your way to a better future in a fiat system. If you look at, you can Google this right now. You can Google this right now. So if what I want to tell you before I tell you what to Google is I want to tell you this, people, that you will beat the system if you become a master of debt in the financial system, the current fiat system we have today. You've got to master debt. You've got to learn how to live in the negative. You have to be in a position where you own nothing except debt. That's how you beat the system. The problem with this is that debt is only available to the elite. Now, I'm not talking about credit card debt. That's the crushing debt that every person is allowed to participate in to keep the foot and the pressure of living on the necks of every single one. That very irresponsible form of debt is very accessible to everyone. I am not talking about that kind of debt. I am talking about the financial debt acquired, the financial debt entered into to acquire assets that are not crashing as fast as the dollar. So you short the dollar, you go short US dollars to put those dollars into a plane that's crashing slower, like property, real estate, stocks, bonds, whatever. They're all crashing. They're just crashing slower. You see, and so You don't have access to the type of debt that is allowed to do that. Only the upper echelon has been given access to an exit valve, an escape hatch to escape the theft. So there is an escape. It's called debt. It's high level financial debt, but the masses can't participate in high level financial debt. And therein is the problem. It's a system that's predicated on only giving the elite the escape while continuing to steal from everyone else that can't escape. You can't escape the fact that if you are not taking advantage of high-level financial debt, that every dollar you're waiting for is less than the dollar you have today. You're working 40 hours a week for some other human being to pay you at the end of the week. The dollars you receive that day are less valuable than the dollar you started earning on Monday morning a week ago. And if you don't spend those dollars right away, they instantly start becoming less valuable the longer you hold them. But what do you put it in? Because savings has been taken from you. 21% a year has been taken from you. And so some people say, well, Oliver, it's now 5%. I can get 5%. I can get 4%. Yeah, that's only a little blip in this trend here. It's not going to last very long. That I'm pretty sure of. But even at that 5%, debasement is operating at roughly 10%. You're still 5% behind. Your purchasing power is losing around 8 to 10%, and you're earning 5%, you're still negative. And then there's price inflation to deal with. You're even more negative. And so all that's really happening to you if you're not participating in the system with high level debt, all you're doing is working that you've only got a certain number of hours a day, and you've only got a certain number of hours in your whole life. How you spend those hours should be one of the most important considerations of your life, because your hours are your life. And so if someone says you have to work this year an hour's worth of your time buys you a dinner. And then next year, an hour and a quarter of your time buys you the same dinner. And then the next year, you have to give up. You've only got a certain number of hours in your whole life, but now every year you're giving up more of your limited hours to get the same dinner. The dinner hasn't freaking changed, but the hours you need to work to get the dinner is going up every single year. At some point, you got to work 2 hours to buy the same dinner, and then 3 hours to buy the same dinner, and 4 hours to buy the same dinner. And this direction of more time for the same thing never stops. It's never going to stop until there is no more system. The ability to escape this has been taken from us unless you can access high-level debt, which the vast majority of you can't. What am I talking about, high-level debt? I want you to Google this. Do it for me now. I'm going to Google it first. See if it brings this up. All right. I want you to Google this. Just do it for me right now. Those of you who can Google this. Warren Buffett borrows at 0%. Just Google that. Warren Buffett borrows at 0%. And see what comes up. This is what I'm talking about. This is the access I'm talking about. This is being directly connected to the freaking money printer for free. Do you understand? For a very low cost to free. We want to hail this dude for what he's accomplished, but in reality, it's cheating. Because there's no way you and I have access to this. We don't have access to free. We don't have access to the money printer. We don't have access to this high level of finance that allows me to escape all the theft that's going on. So we're forced to gamble. We're forced to go out further and further on the risk curve to gamble to try to stay ahead so that I don't have to spend 5 hours of my life to buy the same dinner. If I take the dollars and I gamble it on Microsoft, or I gamble it on Apple stock, or I gamble it on Tesla stock, or I gamble it on this freaking cryptocurrency, the need to gamble has come from the fact that our savings, our escape was taken from us. Our savings has been robbed from us. Your grandparents saved people. Your great-great-grandparents saved. That savings was a vehicle available to them. It wasn't taken from them. It was in vogue to save. They understood the power of saving. And that is why those generations are wealthier than the generation today, where they have zero escape hatch. There is no more savings until 2009. Bitcoin has come to bring savings back to the human race. Bitcoin has come to provide that freedom again, the dignity to be able to save and protect your family's future. It has given every single human being, once again, the power to meet it wherever they are and to store its small amount of excess there, understanding that mathematically it becomes more valuable every 4 years of its existence forever. It has come into being as a system that is outside of the system. A monetary network that is available, a savings technology that is available to every human being on Earth, but yet cannot be controlled or manipulated by any human being on Earth. This monetary system can meet you at the absolute poorest level that exists on planet Earth, all the way to the top of the freaking monetary pyramid. It does not beg you to join it. It does not even ask you to. It only keeps and remains itself, keeps itself available to you at all times. It is never on break. It never takes a vacation. It is never sick at sea. It is never down, not for an instant, not for a minute, not for a moment. It has no days off. It has no coffee breaks. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, all the way for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's available to you. It is never not done what it's promised to do from the first day of its life. October 31st, 2008. Genesis block, January 3rd, 2009. First mined Bitcoin. January 9th, 2009. It has never broke a promise. It has never failed you. It has laid out its monetary policy all the way to 2140. And no matter what's going on in the world, no matter who is saying what, no matter who's writing articles, no matter what war is going on in the world, on average, every 10 minutes, it's TikTok, next block. And so when you understand that Bitcoin's very existence is tied to being the opposite of the theft system, then you'll understand how it can never not continue to rise in value. Why am I constantly telling you this? Why am I telling you that Bitcoin is as certain as going up forever as what someone recently typed as death and taxes? It's as certain as that. It's more certain, in fact. And a lot of people don't understand how confidently I can say that. And it's Oliver, because they're thinking from the theft system. They only have known the theft system and have not deepened their understanding quite yet enough to actually see that Bitcoin is not a part of the theft system. It's the opposite of the theft system. So if the theft system is designed to lose value by 2%, 6%, 8%, 10% every year of its existence, then Bitcoin is designed to go up in value every year or every 4 years of its existence. It's literally the opposite side of the coin. It's tied. Its very life is the opposite. So if the dollar's value is going to continue to erode, Bitcoin is going to continue to rise. If the US debt is going to continue to rise, and it will, Bitcoin is going to continue to rise in value. The debt can't stop, because if it did, there would be instantaneous collapse. The debasement of currency will never stop. The average lifespan of a fiat currency is 27 to 35 years. The average lifespan of a world reserve currency is 150 to 250 years. But where do you think we are as a world reserve currency? The point is this, that Bitcoin has come into existence to deliver the escape again, the only escape that we really have. It has come into existence again to deliver a certainty that human beings have basically never had, because we've always been forced to have to trust other human beings. And Bitcoin is the first thing to come along that is actually outside of the control of human beings. We no longer have to trust the frailty of humanhood. We no longer have to trust the shortcomings of humanhood. Bitcoin is not human. Bitcoin is maths. And as certain as 1 + 1 = 2 on Monday, as it did on Sunday, it is as certain as Bitcoin's value will be higher every 4 years for the rest of eternity. If the US dollar's value will be less every 4 years of its existence, Bitcoin will be valued more every 4 years of its existence. It's as simple as that. And anyone who dares step up to me and says, but Oliver, But Oliver, they always sound like that. But Oliver, all the doubters sound the same. Remember, like, I don't know if you guys remember the Peanuts. Remember when the adults or parents talked, you always heard wah 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 wah. Remember that? I don't know. I know I'm dating myself. Most of you don't even know what the Peanuts is. But anyway, every time I imagine the voice, or I hear the voice of the doubters, it's like Oliver. That's what I hear. But Oliver, this time might be different. The US dollar is going to be different. Dude, listen, every single fiat currency that has ever existed in the history of human mankind has gone to the fiat cemetery. There are more fiat currencies in the cemetery today than are alive today. You don't see any Roman denariuses floating around, do you? What about German marks? Anybody? Anybody see any German marks? Italian lira? Anybody? They come and go all the time. To think that the US dollar is going to be the exception of all the fiat currencies in the world is just being an historical freaking idiot. And the signs are all around you. The debt is running through the roof faster than you can say boo. The basement hit all-time levels in 2020, 2021. It's not been nothing but a straight line down since 1913, since the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank. It's accelerated after the dollar was permanently detached from gold in 1971. And it's on a renewed accelerated path to zero right now. It's only one direction for fiat currencies. Down. And if there's only one direction for fiat currencies, the thing that is designed to be the opposite can only have one direction, up. We have savings again, ladies and gentlemen. Bitcoin is not the best medium of exchange today, nor should we want it to be right now. Bitcoin may not even be the best unit of account, although I would try to argue with you on that point. But it is not the best medium of exchange today, but it is the best savings technology the world has ever had. Most individuals don't understand that a money must evolve through four distinct stages, and it must spend a decent period of time in each one of those stages if it is to remain true and if it is to remain sound. The first of those four stages is one, collectible. First, a true money starts off as something cute, something very collectible, very niche amongst a very small group of people. Bitcoin went through the collectible stage for computer science geeks and small-time drug dealers and criminals and that. It was a niche little trinket. Stage two is store of value. We are just emerging. We're just starting Bitcoin's burgeoning store of value phase. And this is the longest of the four stages, as it should be, and it is the stage where number go up happens the most exponentially. It is when people start hoarding this because they see and gain confidence that this will be more valuable 4 years from now. This will be more valuable 10 years from now. I will always be able to get rid of this at a higher price later. It starts to become a store of value. And because the number goes up, people are reluctant to let it go unless you come to them with something extraordinarily special. And the reason why you don't want store of value, you don't want medium of exchange, because medium of exchange starts to come when store of value starts to taper off and number go up starts to wane. And then because the number doesn't go up so much anymore, people start trading it back and forth, and it starts to grow in popularity as a medium of exchange because the opportunity cost to let it go is less now because the price increases are less to nil. We don't want medium of exchange. And that shitcoin narrative has been sold to you dummies for a very long time. But it's not a medium of exchange. You don't want it to be a medium of exchange, you freaking idiot. We need it to be hoarded. We need it to be hodled. We need no one to use, the vast majority not to use it. I know that I'm going to get in trouble with some of the Bitcoin maxis who's bought into this narrative that you're supposed to be buying coffees and stuff with it. Fine, you want to do that for your cutesy little activity, that's fine. But the vast majority of Bitcoin should be held in tightly. More and more people should understand I'm using this to save for my future. I'm not using this for next month's grocery bill. And the more people that hodl it, at some point, that hodl rate gets so thick that almost everyone has some level of savings in Bitcoin. Almost everyone, whether it's small, a few dollars, to gargantuan amounts of wealth plugged into Bitcoin. And it is only at that point that, since almost everyone has some, people naturally start swapping things for it. But you need the hodl rate to get very high before it's even possible to have a very good, thorough, long-lasting medium of exchange phase. We don't want medium of exchange phase because that's the sign that number go up has begun to wane. And we've just started number go up, in my opinion. The final phase in a money is unit of account. That is when you stop using something else to price your goods, services, and products in. And increasingly, the world will start to say, you know what, give me 150,000 sats for that. You know what? If you can afford 2 Bitcoin for that, I'll take it. I'll give it to you. Oh, you like this? You like this 12,000 foot mansion I have on top of the hill? Give me 2 Bitcoin for it. And that's when it starts to become a unit of account, where people understand the value of things through the eyes of Bitcoin more than through the eyes of something else. Now, there's an element of these 4 things that can coexist. I'm not saying that it's like one day we stop store of value and the next day we start medium of exchange. No, it's not like that. There can be perpetual overlap in different degrees. So there are some people that their life is using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. I don't doubt that. There are some people who have gotten so used to pricing everything in Satoshis that they think more in Satoshis than US dollars. I get that. And there are some people who are playing around with Bitcoin like it's a freaking trinket. I get that too. It's not that you can't have all 4 at the same time. I'm just talking about where the majority of the adoption and involvement is. We want the majority to be in store of value right now. We don't need the majority buying freaking coffee with it. I'm sorry. All right. My final point, savings is back. Protecting your family is now back and available for every human being on earth. Yes, you've got to study a little bit. Yes, you've got to see it. Yes, you've got to have that epiphany. That's what I encourage you to do. Dig a little deeper. It is not by mistake, guys, that increasingly every month there are people from my world, increasingly so, coming to the same conclusion Billionaires are only growing as Bitcoiners. Millionaires are only growing as Bitcoiners. Smart people are only growing as Bitcoiners. The numbers are growing. They're not diminishing. Companies that are adopting it are growing. Institutions that are they're growing. Supporters of it verbally to the world, that number's growing. It's not by mistake. Not by mistake. All right, guys, let me see let's see what questions you have for me, if there are any here. Almost never get any questions from you guys. Let's see here. All right, Damn Lazy. That's an interesting handle. Damn Lazy has a question here, or a statement, I should say. I don't see a question mark on it, but let's see. It's going up by 7% a year. Not quite sure what he's referring to. All right. Going up by 7% a year. Bitcoin deflation is 20% a year. Sometimes got to give. Doesn't take a genius to figure out what's going to happen eventually. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so the supply of US dollars is going up by 7% a year. Bitcoin is deflationary. I agree with that. Some people feel and still believe that Bitcoin has an inflation rate. I've discussed that many times. Bitcoin doesn't have an inflation rate. Bitcoin has an issuance rate, which is very different. And, you know, some people have accused me of just playing with semantics, but it's really not. This point is so important to understand, guys, because Bitcoin has been deflationary from its very birth. So you can only introduce the concept of inflation if you have an asset that does not have a known supply. So then you must measure every new piece of that. And whenever that new asset is produced, that is its inflation rate, because there is no known absolute finality to its supply. So inflation as a metric must be applied. But when you know upfront what the absolute supply is, then you don't have inflation, you have issuance. So in the same fashion, if I had a specialty shoe store and I had 21 pairs of limited edition shoes to sell, I opened the doors of the business. On day one, I've got 21 shoes, and I sell over the first week, I sell 19 of the 21 pairs of shoes. So in 1 week, I sell 19 of them. I didn't inflate my supply by 19. That's stupid. I didn't inflate the supply of shoes. I issued 19 of the 21 I started with. Bitcoin started out with 21 million. It will always have 21 million. It has issued 19.6 million Bitcoin of the 21 million, but it has not inflated the 21 million it started with. And when you understand this, it opens up a deeper layer of, it raises the curtain higher, for if you will. And this allows you to see deeper. That Bitcoin is the only thing in the entire universe, the only thing accessible to humans that is not inflationary. In fact, it's deflationary. It's deflationary because people lose Bitcoin. They lose it. Some people lose it by forgetting their keys or through death or what have you. Bitcoin is also lost through the dust factor. So as fees get higher, if you have not done proper UTXO management, you could have some UTXOs or little bits and pieces of Bitcoin that just become unspendable because the fee to move them is higher than the value of the Satoshis that you have in that UTXO. So, it's actually deflationary and that, from that perspective. Let's see here. All right, Garrett has a question here. Once the ETF has 1 million coins, the ETF side have accumulated 1 million coins of Bitcoin, do you think we will continue to have the same cycles of 70% drops? Well, think of it this way. That's a good question. So the question in short is, now that we have institutional adoption coming into the space, which means that we will always have an institutional bid for Bitcoin, which Bitcoin has never had throughout its entire 15-year history. That is a very important point to understand, guys. Bitcoin never had the demand side. For 15 years, it became the best performing asset the world has ever known. It's become the 10th most valuable asset the world has ever known, the 16th most valuable currency the world has ever known inside of 15 years. It has the #1 record for every single time span you can think of. It's the best performing. It has the best record for the best performing asset in a week, in a month, in a quarter, in a year, and 3 years, and 5 years, and 10 years, and 15 years. There is nothing close to it. And it has done all of this without having demand, only having the supply side to operate on through its 4-year halving mechanism. All right. And so now, for the first time, Bitcoin has an automatic bid, guys. ETFs are designed to do one thing for the rest of their entire existences. That is to buy Bitcoin. That is what their function is. Think about that. That is a permanent bid in the market, something Bitcoin has never had. So Garrett is asking a very intelligent question. Now that we have an institutional bid for Bitcoin that will never go away, is it possible that we no longer see 70% declines? The short answer is, it's very possible we don't see 70% declines. And I believe that we wouldn't see 70% declines without this bid, without the institutional adoption, without the ETF approvals. Why? Because if you look historically throughout all of Bitcoin cycle, each decline gets shallower and shallower. That's because it's becoming more and more adopted, and the HODL rate is rising every single cycle. So for instance, all right, I am an individual who will not sell. So I help create, and I will only buy. So I help create a higher floor in the market in the period of time that I didn't exist. Do you understand? So because I'm now a new participant in the network that will only buy on declines, the floor gets higher. So every single decline without institutional adoption, without Bitcoin spot ETFs, has been shallower. The first decline was 95%, 96%. Then we went to something like, 96%, then like 90%, then 80, 85%. And this one was 78%. So we go from 90s to 80s. We're already in the 70s. We're going to move to the 60s, and we're going to move to the 40s, and we're going to move to the 30s. And I think that we probably hang in that 30, 40 range for a while, where normal pullbacks in Bitcoin are 30, 40%. Now, let me take this opportunity to also mention something that I want to make at least those who are willing to listen to me and consider what I have to say valuable. One of the key reasons, which is connected to Garrett's question, one of the key reasons I think that it's silly to sell Bitcoin is that, first of all, it's freedom, and you don't sell freedom. But let's not even say you've gone down the rabbit hole deep enough to understand it as freedom from the fiat slave system, right? Let's say you haven't quite, that hasn't quite clicked for you. It's still stupid to sell it because, and try to go back into it, because if you are living in a developed part of the world where your tax rate is going to be somewhere in the 30 to 40% range, then you are already bringing upon yourself, let's call it 40%. You're already bringing upon yourself a 40% bear market before the bear market. So some people come to me all the time and say, Oliver, I'll sell at the top and take the money out and get back in at the bottom. And I say, yeah, right. And which Disney movie is that one? I didn't know you starred in Disney movies, but which one did you star in? Because that only happens when you're in your freaking dreams. Doesn't happen in real life. But then I go on and say that, okay, let's watch your movie. Let's watch your movie. Even in your movie, you're going to lose 40% in taxes. So you've already brought 40% of the 70% on yourself. There's only 30% left. And if my theory is right and we go to 60%, you've already brought more than half of the bear market on yourself. So if the next bear market is 60%, and you're going to take profits and have to pay a 40% tax on it, you've already created your own bear market. Why not just keep it and use the 60% decline to get more for the next run? So that every freaking 4 years, you are massively wealthier. Anyway, that's my 2 cents, guys. Harjit says, Oliver, every time I listen to you, I can't help from buying Bitcoin. Boom, I hope you smash that buy button hard. Love it. North Star is making a very good comment here. He says, it's also just a fairer world with Bitcoin. The everyday person works hard every day. It's not unfair to expect the ability to save your energy in somewhat that doesn't automatically debase. Yes, guys. I'm going to end on this point. All right. I'm going to end on this point. You see, humans lived for a very long time with no need to save because they lived in a world that was totally dominated by scarcity. Calories were scarce. Most people starved to death. That's true. Life was even scarce because the odds of you living past a certain age was low. You're probably going to be eaten by a wild animal at some point in your life. You're probably going to die hunting, or you're going to get killed by another group wanting to take your stuff. And so food was scarce. Safety, security was scarce. Shelter was scarce. Everything was scarce. And so you consumed what you had, period. You got it and you consumed it. You didn't store it. See, storing came later as the ability of man to do things more efficiently through technology, like the man that started fishing with a sword or with a stake in his hand in the river versus the man trying to catch a fish with his bare hands. The man with the stake would obviously be able to get more fish than the man with the hand with just his bare hands, and he would be able to get more fish than he actually needed that day. Thus came the ability to, the necessity to store my excess wealth. And at that time, food was wealth. And so he who had the most food had the highest chances of living. And so food was wealth. And the person who got food to the point of excess needed to be able to store the excess. And so we have now fast forward to the world today where most people in a modern world live in a world of surplus. There's surplus calories today. There's shelter for the vast majority of people in the developed world. I don't know if that, I can't keep up with what's politically correct today, guys. So, but you know what I'm saying. Most people have, the people I'm addressing anyway, the majority of you have the ability to put something away. You're probably wasting a good portion of what you earn, what you give your life for now. On a weekend, you might buy something stupid that just you'll never experience again. Maybe you drank an extra bottle that you didn't need of an alcohol. Maybe you bought a stupid shirt that just because some other dude's name is on it, you paid 20 times the cost of the shirt. Like silly shit like that, you're probably doing now. That you could really just put in something like Bitcoin that will be exponentially more valuable later. And so most people have the ability to put something away. This putting something away can be done wrong. You can put it away in the wrong thing. But Bitcoin has come into existence to eliminate all of that confusion. There's no more guessing. There's no more gambling at what to put that into today. It is brought about certainty because it does not rely on human beings. It relies on math. Can you think of something more certain than math today in the world? Politicians? Every human being in your life has failed you. Think about this, people. There's not a single human being that you know that has not failed you in one form or another, from your kids to your spouse to your parents. Every single human being has failed you in one way or another. Every single one. The only thing you'll ever be able to say that has never failed you is Bitcoin. It has brought about a certainty to humans that they're not used to. They're so not used to it, they can't freaking believe it. But hopefully you get to the point where you believe it sooner rather than later, because the window of opportunity to really take full advantage of this is closing. You'll always have access, but it's not at that real massive way that we can do it now. This we can still do it massively now. $1 in Bitcoin in 2010 today is over $40 million today, guys. Think about this. If you just throw $1 in Bitcoin in 2010 and just forgot about it, kept the keys, it's over $40 million today, $1. But you know why people didn't do that? Because they disrespected it, because it wasn't valued very much. Today, people are making the same mistake with Satoshis. $1 in Satoshis is what today? What is that? 2,000 plus some odd Satoshis. Whatever it is. Most people won't put $1 there. They won't, because the Satoshi level is so insignificant. They're like, what's that going to do? Well, Bitcoin, the full Bitcoin was at a price where people were like, what's that going to do? Bitcoin was at zero for almost a year. Do you understand that? Then it moved to a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a penny, a whole Bitcoin. And people are like, what is that going to do if I put $1 into it? You're doing the same mistake at the Satoshi level. You're saying, what is that going to do putting $1 into it? It's only, what is a Satoshi? Look at how insignificant it is. You're making the same mistake. Bitcoin was the past Satoshi. And the Satoshi level is going to repeat the same thing that the Bitcoin level did. People in the future are going to look back and say, you were too dumb to put $1 into that. It's only going to keep repeating. And then there's going to be bits, which are fractions of a Satoshi, and the bits are going to do it too. It's going up forever, Laura. It's going up forever. All right, guys. Love you to death. Thank you once again for joining me live. Let me see how many people here I have on this amazing Monday. Bitcoin is at 43,000 US dollars. Not that really matters too much, guys. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for spending your precious time with me. Don't forget that if you didn't catch all of this, it will be on Bitcoin Unleashed. In the meantime, guys, you know what to do. Stack harder and stay the course. I'll see you next time. Ciao for now.
And I am your 13%er Bitcoiner. Be safe out there, and until next time. Boom!